Hello and welcome to this interview with Rowan Lavery, who's the CEO of FreeAgent, an Edinburgh-based bookkeeping and software product, which is specifically designed for small businesses, micro businesses, and freelancers. So, Rowan, thank you for joining me today. Really delighted to get you on this. And I'm going to do a bit of an interview asking you about how you've built the UK's #1 bookkeeping software for small businesses. So before we get started, I just thought I'd ask you. You've been the CEO for the past 3 years, but you've actually been running the business for about 18 years.
Yeah, well, we founded the company, myself and Ed Molyneux and Ollie Heady, back in 2007. So it's been like 17 years. It was our 17th birthday back in February.
Wow.
And obviously, I've been with the business all of that time. So originally, I was more on the product side of the business. My background was sort of in design and product before I was involved with FreeAgent. And then when Ed stepped down as a CEO back in 2021, that's when I took over.
Brilliant. Yeah. So yes, I saw that. So you were the chief product officer and head of design, but before that you were a freelance designer.
Yeah.
But you studied physics at Edinburgh Uni.
I did, yes. I did a PhD originally. That's like a PhD at Edinburgh. And didn't really enjoy it. I didn't like a lot of people. I found my PhD quite a sort of isolating experience. You're just working on this one big massive thing on your own. Pretty much for me, it took 4 years, and you've got nobody really around you to bounce ideas off, and it's just really very much this sort of like solo project. And so I think I realized then I wanted to do something with a group and actually, come together and actually do something that had an impact as a team and organization. I had the opportunity to go into tech after my PhD, and that's really when I started my career in tech. And I kind of worked for an agency in Edinburgh for a number of years. Also started doing freelance work as well at that time. And then, met Ed, and I think it was like the back end of 2006, and then we sort of started the business in 2007.
Brilliant. I was going to ask, how did you and Ed meet?
It was through an acquaintance. So Ed, about Ed's background was really interesting as well. He was a Harrier pilot in the RAF. Yeah. He had left the Air Force, but had been contracting back into the Air Force as a programmer, because he'd originally done programming in Cambridge. And so he was working as a contractor. He was quite unhappy with his existing accountants. Let's just say that. Very entrepreneurial guy, and he had this idea as this early prototype of what FreeAgent would sort of eventually become. And he had just moved up from London to Scotland at the time with his family. And so he was quite new to the area and quite new to Scotland. And then he was looking to build out this product. And then he was introduced to me through a sort of mutual acquaintance of ours. Mm-hmm. And then we just started very early on discussing what that might become. And then a little bit later on, he met Ollie, actually back down in London at a conference in London, and he eventually moved up to Edinburgh as well.
Wow. Okay. No, well, it was a great meeting of minds, obviously. So like very, very fortuitous. So if you go back to them, right? So I think, I don't know if you know, but like I used to work for one of your bigger competitors. So I used to work in marketing for them. I remember looking at FreeAgent and thinking, they're so cool and good at what they do, and I kind of wished we could be a bit more like you, right? But thinking about that, right, I was also surprised. Like, I'm also like, why did you start another accountancy software company, which has obviously gone on to be really successful? But there were quite a few others, and there was a big incumbent, obviously, that was really well established. And I'm always surprised that people think, we'll create our own. What was it that you thought you could do differently? Which but like, was that not off-putting?
I think we were a little, probably in a good way, we're a little bit naive. What I would say is, like, so of all of those competitors that you're talking about, your Xeros, Sages, QuickBooks, we all sort of launched our online products around the same time.
Yeah.
So 2006, 2007, 2008, cash flow, as well. But everybody saw that that's when web apps were becoming a thing. So it wasn't like there was loads of established web products. Yeah, those companies that had existing desktop products in the market for decades, right? But it was still generally a new thing. And because we were all web developers, right? We all came from that background of web development. It was just natural for us that we were going to build something. And like I said, I think Ed was unhappy with how his current process of managing his finances with his accountant, and he was like, well, there's got to be a better way. Let's see if we can build this internet software to do it. And there was some early products in the market, but they weren't established names. Xero wasn't an established name back in 2007. QuickBooks or QuickBooks Online, I'm not sure when that launched, but it must have been like around that time, and likewise with Sage as well. So it wasn't like there was already these really established products in the market. I think the interesting thing was when we noticed that there was a bunch of products, some of the ones we talked about, some other smaller ones starting to get traction, and then starting to see the money that was being pumped into these ones from either these incumbents or these quite new players like Xero that were obviously had a quite a substantial backing behind them. Then it was like, well, okay, what's our response to that? And then we had to think about, okay, well, what is our positioning in the market? And that was really when we, I guess, first started to think about that. But in the very, very early days, we just thought it'd be cool to build some software that people like us would find helpful. It wasn't any more thought out than that.
Yeah, no, but yeah, well, great. No, that's good. That's a good insight. I mean, I definitely, when I tell people about FreeAgent now, and I think it's always been this way, I always say that it's software designed for the businesses, the business owners, the freelancers, not software designed for accountants.
Yeah,
and that's what the appeal is. And I use FreeAgent myself in my business. I've actually used them all to try them out, but for me in my business, it's the best fit for me. And but yes, what I was going to say is someone like Sage, it has been around a long time, since the 80s. It's for accountants, in-house accountants or external accountants working with businesses, and it's the Sage 50 product. I don't know if they still call it that. It's got all the bells and whistles. It's got every feature, but it's probably overkill for most businesses, small businesses and micro businesses. But yeah, a lot of the cloud accountancy software is more stripped down, simplified, easier to use for the majority of the micro and small businesses. So I think the fact that you were able to do that from the outset was a really smart move.
Yeah, I mean, I think we knew that the traditional, apart from the difficulties of using desktop software and collaborating with accountants, that was always like a challenge. But apart from that, the software was pretty clunky. It was pretty grim, and some people liked it because they used it for years and years. But if you were just like a new business coming along, you weren't like an expert in accounting or finance, and you just wanted something to help you run your business, they were by and large overkill and pretty hard to use. And so you're right, we came from this perspective of none of us were accountants, none of us are accountants, and so we almost came from this perspective, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Well, we want to build something that's so easy that people like us can understand it, almost like unencumbered by just like this, like having this knowledge of like a formal education in accountancy. And that was good because we really did focus on the user experience and making it really easy. But at the same time, we were we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. We had to rebuild our accounting engine like 3 or 4 times in the first couple of years because we just didn't know how to build an accounting engine. So we had to do quite a lot of work to bring it up to the sort of the standard, I guess, that people would expect.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And I know as well, I'll stop talking about them in a minute, but I know that Sage did launch a cloud product, but it kind of failed the first one, so they had to scrap it.
Yeah.
And then they started again, and that's when I went to work for them. I worked in the marketing team to try and help that go again, but a company like that, which is a FTSE 100, so successful with their desktop products, it was quite difficult for them to, in a way, some people there didn't want the cloud products to succeed because the desktop software was making so much money, and that they didn't want it. That was the cash cow. So there was some battles going on about, should we support this cloud product or not? Should we? But I think for a long time there were cloud deniers. They didn't want to accept or get behind it.
And that's that sort of that cultural shift in an organization and the willingness to effectively be able to disrupt your own business from within is a very, very difficult one for a company to make when you're effectively talking about cannibalizing your existing revenue streams and your cash cows that you're talking about. So I think that's something that I think Intuit, did that really well. They did manage to respond to that quite quickly and they took that really seriously. I think Sage struggled with that originally, anyway, for the reasons that you're talking about. But for us, and obviously for Xero as well, that we're cloud first, you're almost like free from that. You don't have those internal politics to worry about. You're just thinking, well, listen, this is the only product we have. We believe this is the future of how accountancy is going to be done for small businesses and clients with practices, and we just go all in on that. So in some ways, obviously, yeah, you don't have that brand, you don't have that capital behind you, but what you do have is speed and buy-in, and that really is very, very valuable.
And then how easy was it for you to get traction and get people interested? Because again, Sid relied very heavily on the accountants to be their resellers, and they didn't really want to get behind the cloud products because they couldn't make much margin on that. So we couldn't. I say we, when I worked in the marketing team for the cloud product, we couldn't rely on the accountants to sell our product. So it was all about new acquisition and content marketing and social media and events and that. So how easy was that for you to, did you get accountants to get behind it, or was it all just direct to business owners?
A little bit. I don't think we, just being completely candid, I think that's probably the area that we struggled with, was to get really good traction within the practice channel originally. I think we've absolutely managed to change that in the business, and it's works very, very well for us now. And obviously there's a mindset shift for our accountants these days. But I don't think we did an amazing job of that in the early days for a bunch of reasons. And so, yeah, like you, we were going sort of like straight to the small businesses and doing a lot of content marketing and SEO and things. And some of that was effective, but it's also really expensive, and it doesn't always scale as much as you want. There's a little bit of an idea you can just scale things like paid marketing, but really actually you can't, because it becomes prohibitively expensive quite quickly. And so, yeah, it was a struggle for us. And I think, we always had this thing where we were really confident in the product we were building. We really believed in it, and we got the feedback we would get from customers and users was like, they would sing the praises of the product, and they still do. But it was really cracking that channel stuff that you were talking about that was difficult, especially in those early days.
Yeah. Well, it looks like you've done it now, so well done. And I know you've won loads of awards as well. So when I talk about being UK's #1 bookkeeping software, there is like a reason for that. If you go on your website, you've won loads of awards over the years. So So can you just talk a bit about the different growth stages that you've had? So originally when you started, was it very much like a Edinburgh, Scottish business networking thing, or did you go national from the outset? How did you do that?
So I think so. For the first couple of years, we all still had our jobs, right? So we bootstrapped the project from like 2007 to 2009. I was still working at an agency. I was still doing freelance work. Ed and I were both doing contracts, and they were sort of dipping in and out to fund the business. And in the beginning of 2009, that's when we raised our first angel investment round from Christoph Jans, who's with Point 9. And that was it was like 100 grand or something. It was like, by today's standards, it was a tiny investment, but that's what we used to effectively all start working on the business first time. And we raised another round probably about 6 to 9 months after that. And really that's when we started taking the business seriously. For the first couple of years, it really was just a side hustle for us. And then we did a bunch of other investment rounds from angels. We did a round with Iris, and we did quite one of our bigger rounds with Iris Software. who at that time had exclusive rights to sell into the practice channel, and that was one of the ways that we actually went to the practice channel through them. And then we did a bunch of other things. We did crowdfunding and debt funding and various sorts of things, and all obviously leading up to when we did an IPO in 2016. Yeah. So we did a lot. I mean, we kind of like say we've ticked every single box.
Yeah, you have. Yeah.
Including an acquisition, obviously. We the business back in 2018, so we pretty much did everything that you could possibly do in that startup journey.
Yeah, no. Well, I've heard a couple of presentations by obviously I've heard Ed speak, but I've heard some of the other colleagues talk about that. Like, you've literally done every stage so you are like the perfect role models, I think, for a tech startup scale up journey.
They weren't all successful, I would say that. They weren't always, we made a lot of mistakes, and there was things in there that didn't work out as well as we thought they were going to. But, like that's part of the fun. I always, for me personally, I always look back and see all of this stuff as a learning curve for me. And if I had the opportunity to learn so much as a founder in like a high growth startup and scale up. And so even though I can look back and say, that period was absolutely disastrous, or that was really pretty unenjoyable, I still sort of see the value that I got out of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So of the different types of funding that you've gone for, what would you say was the hardest? Was it the first bit of funding investment you got, or later stages?
I think in terms of, we did a crowdfunding round in it was like 2015 we did that, and that was really hard work. We were quite early on to be like a B2B business doing like a crowdfunding. There wasn't any that done it by that point, and I think we were just a little bit earlier we funded, but that was really hard work to do that for a relatively small raise. I think we raised just over £1 million at that point, which it wasn't a lot of money. We could have raised that privately very easily, but we thought it'd be a good thing for us to do in terms of, opening up the business to our customer base and user base, but it was really hard work. So that was difficult. And actually, after going public, that was quite a challenging time. And Ed's talked about that in the past, of the pressures of being a publicly listed company and how it can quite dramatically shift the focus of your business. In quite a challenging way. So that was, I think, when I look back, as the most difficult period in it, it was probably after we did the IPO.
Right. Okay.
That was definitely like there's a quite a dramatic shift to delivering on your short-term results. There's all of a sudden it's all about the next quarter and hitting the targets, and you've got to, the analysts are going to be looking at the numbers, and you've got to be doing this, as opposed to sometimes taking more of a long-term view and saying, right, we're going to do this thing, and it's not going to pay off this year, maybe not even next year, but we think it'll be really, really useful down the line. That is difficult when such an intense focus on short-term results and hitting some targets that you said you were going to hit. And so that was definitely difficult.
Right. Very good. No, that's insightful. Thank you. And then what about building a team? Like how easy has that been? Because have you got a couple of hundred or a few hundred people working?
Yeah, so it's just under 300 that we've got, which is, it's a decent sized team that we've got. Certainly it's a lot smaller than a lot of our competitors. I think the interesting thing is for us, and I've chatted about this quite a bit, is the growth in FreeAgent. When you look back, it's been good. We've got amazing customer base. We've got a really good team. We've got the business to like a really successful place where we are now. It has taken us a long time to get there. It's like 17 and a half years. And so that growth in the company, the growth in the team was good, but it wasn't like we had this overnight hockey stick explosion where we had to like triple the size of the business. We didn't raise like £10 million and then have to go from like 50 people up to 500 people in the space of a few months. We never had that absolute rocket ship. And what I think that allowed was that for us as founders, because we'd never run business before. Like, we'd done like freelancing or contracting, but none of us had ever run a company before of like any size, like let alone like 50, 100, 200 people. And when we first started the business, I remember we had this conversation, we joked and we said, yeah, well, we don't want to run a company of 50 people, right? And we were all like, yeah, of course, we don't want to run a company of 50 people. And we got to like 40 people and we're like, well, okay, we're going to have 50 people, but we don't want to run a company of 100 people. That would be insane. And then you get to like 90 people and you're like, all right, okay, this is not bad. And so there was this constant sort of like learning curve that we were on as founders and business owners that allowed us to, I guess, our own ability to level up as the business was scaling. And what I think was quite important is those things were quite evenly matched. There was never a case where the demands of the business in terms of the growth aspirations were completely outstripping our abilities as founders. And you see that in some businesses, right? They just grow so quickly, the co-founders just aren't able to keep up with the expectations of investors or whatever it is, and they have to sort of like step aside and bring new management in. We were never in that position. So we had good growth, but it wasn't like this insane growth that was just going to be unmanageable for us as essentially first-time founders.
Yeah, no, I love that. It sort of gave you a bit of time to adjust to the new stage, then sort of level up and a little bit of breathing space to learn.
Yeah, you make mistakes, right? But as long as they're not, absolutely disastrous mistakes, then you can fix those and you can move on. And so I think that was quite an important aspect of our journey, especially in those early days. The first sort of 5 years.
Yeah. Well, I must admit, like everyone I've met at FreeAgent is fantastic. Like I love everyone that I've met and spoken to, and you've really clearly got a great culture at the business. I've been to your office a few times, and it's just got a great vibe about the place. And then when I've met people out and about at meetings or at events, just great. You obviously hire well. So,
yeah, we do. We hire across all parts of our organization. Our support team. We sing their praises constantly because they're just absolutely amazing. I would say they're hands down the best support team of any of the sort of like vendors in the market in terms of their knowledge, their compassion with customers, and their ability to sort of like really help customers out. And that's just a culture that we have across the whole organization. It's really important to us that we enjoy our work. That's really important. It's like we try and sort of have a really good work-life balance in our FreeAgent, but at the same time, we really sort of treat our customers with respect and dignity. And that goes through all parts of our organization, through customer support, as I mentioned, but the sales process that we have as well. We really pride ourselves on working in a real sort of like partnership model with our accountancy partners, as opposed to sort of being like high, pushy sales tactics or anything like that. And we really do try and take a different approach in the market.
Yeah. Well, I think as well, you're consistent with your brand and your messaging externally as well. So it always comes across, going back, like as long as I've heard of FreeAgent, like, which I say is probably 12 years ago. Is that right? Yeah, by me. So maybe longer. It always comes across as genuinely friendly, easy to use, wants to help, and be genuinely useful and valuable to the business owners. So it's not just the software being easy to use and valuable, but the content and the webinars and the workshops and the guides and everything. It's just So you obviously the people who you seem to. I know a lot of companies say that they care and they want, but I think FreeAgent does come across that you do genuinely care and help the end user.
Yeah, because we always, we obviously build accounting software. That's what we do. But at the end of the day, what our customers are trying to do is to run their business, right? They don't really want to use accounting software, right? Nobody wants to use accounting software. It's a necessary evil of getting your business done. What they want to do is to get paid from their customers, or like be able to not get in trouble with HMRC or wherever it is, right? And so when we're thinking about why do we exist and what it is that we do, yes, the software is really important. But if we can also help our customers just be better at business, help them with like stressful things through the content that you're talking about, or webinars, or wherever it is, then that's something that we're going to do. And that's an important aspect to why we're here as a business.
Yeah. No, I think, well, you're doing it very well. So hats off to you and everyone in your team. Just wanted to ask you a little bit about the Edinburgh tech ecosystem and Scottish ecosystem, and what's it been like being part of that? Has that been supportive? Has that been a help or a hindrance or what?
Yeah, I think so. I will say is back in 2007, there really wasn't very much of an Edinburgh tech ecosystem at all. It was small and quite fragmented. There's a few sort of like success stories that came out of Edinburgh. Skyscanner, also very notable. FanDuel were the other one. So like two of the sort of Scottish unicorns. But there really wasn't a lot happening. I would say that has changed like quite dramatically over the last, like 10 years or so. And now there is really quite a thriving like tech scene in Scotland, and Edinburgh especially is definitely a hub of that. So there's a lot more companies around. There's a lot more support for companies around. I still think there are areas in which we struggle in Scotland, and that's predominantly around attracting investment in, which is a key part of any like tech ecosystem. I think we do have things like the talent coming through. We have obviously some really great universities that put out amazingly talented students, and we take on quite a lot of those as interns into FreeAgent. That's quite a regular thing that we do. So I think some of the talents there, I think some of the ideas there, I think we do struggle still to attract investment in. And so there's been quite a lot of work in that area. The Scottish government have been quite supportive in that area over the last few years. And something that I was actually involved with a little bit as well. So I think it's starting to come through, but you probably couldn't say that we're on sort of tech ecosystem hub on the same level as some of the major other European ones.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah. So pre-lockdown, I was going up to Edinburgh quite a bit. I thought, well, I'm based in the northeast of England. I'm currently sat in Sunderland today, but I'm like Newcastle, Sunderland, northeast. And going back many years ago, I used to work for Shell Livewire, which was a youth enterprise scheme funded by Shell, and it started in Aberdeen. Yeah. I used to go up to Scotland a lot, and I was always impressed how supportive the Scottish government was to startups and small businesses compared to the English government. There seemed to be a lot more initiatives and support for the early stage. And I used to think that northeast businesses in particular spend too much time looking south and would be better off trying to build stronger links with Edinburgh in particular and Scotland. Yeah. So I don't know what you think. I think there's a big opportunity to connect the northeast of England with Edinburgh and Glasgow and Scotland. So I don't know what are there.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I mean, there's a new, it's been around for a couple of years now, initiative in Scotland. It's like the tech scalers.
Yes.
You didn't know that. So it originally came from Mark Hogan, who was the previous CEO of Skyscanner, which was really good. He did an amazing report, which was how look at what it takes for ecosystems to effectively be successful. And part of it was about education, starting off education at a very, very young area, but following all the way through to secondary and tertiary. It was around the support for startups as they scale, in terms of incubators, co-located spaces, training, all of that stuff, and investment as well. And that was like a really, really good view. And off the back of that, the Scottish government has invested quite a lot of money into supporting some of those new hubs around Scotland. There's 5 of those hubs. And so I think that's some really positive things. But yeah, like you're saying, that model almost needs to be replicated and properly funded as well elsewhere. So I certainly think there's a lot of like great opportunities and ties between the sort of north of England and Scotland as well. Yeah. I've been down to Newcastle and sort of places like that regularly as well. So.
Yeah, well, it's only an hour and a half away on the train. Yeah. So and obviously it's a beautiful city and it's a lovely train ride, and it's I don't know, I think Scots are Geordies and Mackems are quite similar, I think, to the Scots. I don't know. So I've always had a bit of an easier ride when I've been up there than maybe other people from further down south. But I've checked out. I have got some Scottish heritage as well. So so the Chisholm clan. So I've got me masks.
What's your tartan?
Yeah. So just on that, a bit more on that, like when you talked about the investment, what? So again, this is just my perception. I think the Scottish businesses and ecosystem is very good. maybe an over-reliant on the public sector for the reasons that I mentioned before, and less on the private investment. So what do you think needs to? How could that be addressed? Or too big a question?
It is a big question. Yeah. So I think there's a couple of aspects to that. I think there is good funding at probably the very, very early seed stage. Scotland is where it probably becomes a little bit more difficult is when you get more into the sort of Series A and B sort of like levels. I think the issue is it really has to be this virtuous cycle that you're not going to attract in that external investment until you can actually demonstrate some traction of the ecosystem. So you can demonstrate like a good pipeline of companies that are growing, scaling, getting traction and starting finding product market fit and starting to succeed. And so the problem is though that it's harder to scale that unless you've got the investment. So that's where really there's a little bit of a catch-22. And so I wouldn't definitely pretend to have all the answers to that. That was some of the things that, as I mentioned before, Mark Hogan addressed in his report of really starting to build, for example, the talent pipeline, both in terms of people that are native to Scotland, but also attracting probably people in from outside of Scotland who have already built successful businesses and are maybe trying to replicate that success. Because one of the best ways to ensure I guess both visibility but also success in new businesses is when you've got effectively spinners, people who've worked at successful startups in the past, have maybe gone on to be acquired, they've made a bit of money and then they go on to set up their own business as a result of that. And some of those success stories that I talked about, like Skyscanner or Fangio, have definitely you've seen spinners from that. There's people that have worked at FreeAgent that have gone on to create their own successful startups as well, which is awesome. And so I think there's a little bit of that sort of like positive flywheel that you need to do, and then it reaches this critical mass, or reaches this tipping point, at which point you're more on the radar and you start to become a more attractive proposition for that external investment. And like I said, I don't think we're there yet with Scotland, but I think that is trying to like just almost like build that momentum and then more of the grassroots level, and build that pipeline of individuals, talent, and organizations as well.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, well, I definitely saw that when Skyscanner was acquired. Then all of a sudden there was a load of with a load of money and set up their own business or became advisors and giving back and so people who have that proven track record and going again and and let's say if I think your co-founders, Ed, has he become dabbling a bit with angel investment, or he's
yes. Done. I think Ollie has done it a bit as well. Ed's got another startup now, so he's moved on to do something completely different. But there's just that idea of constantly sort of like giving back to the community, either in terms of like time or investment, and also the idea of like bringing that experience into new ventures as well. I think it's really useful. Yeah,
brilliant. So is that something in the future you might be interested in? Can you not say? I know you're very busy doing what you do now, but maybe
I'm not sure I've got the energy to start. To be honest, like the thought of like going back to just all those late nights and scrabbling around everything, it's just I'm not really sure. For me it was I think it is interesting because there's definitely founders that enjoy that early stage, the excitement, the risk, betting it all on something. And then what you do see is like not everybody enjoys, just because you enjoy running like a 5-person startup does not mean you're going to enjoy running like a 200, 300, 400, 500 person company, because they're just fundamentally, they are different jobs, right? So some people are more suited to one of those phases or like another phase. And so it's natural that they'll just, they make a point where you're just like, do you know what, this isn't really what I enjoy anymore. For me, I actually do enjoy running the business at the size it is now, but it is very much it's a shift in mindset. Like you can't still hold on to this idea that you're running a scrappy startup, because you're not. After you've been running a business of, almost 300 people for 17 years, it's just a different job. So either you're sort of say, right, well, I don't want to do that job and I want to go on and do something different, or you have to sort of say, well, this is a job and I'm going to change my mindset to sort of really commit to that. That's something that definitely I had to almost go through this. You have to make quite a conscious decision about that. I think you really have to do a bit of soul searching about it.
Yeah. So I'm sure you have, did you have good support around that, like mentors or guidance on how to do that, or not?
I mean, I do now. So I have a brilliant coach that I work with now, who's really, really useful to me. But not then. And it was one of the things, I guess it was some of the points at which I really struggled with, like over the years. As a startup, you have ups and downs. You have times when you're on top of the world, and other times where you feel it's just like it's an absolute nightmare. And some of the points where I guess I was at my lowest was when I was really sort of like trying to understand what the future was going to be, like what was going to be important to me going forward with this business. If we were going to sell it, what was I going to do after we sold it? What would I do myself? So there were things I definitely struggled with, like over the years at various points, and I probably, like, there's things I've talked about subsequently with other people who've been through that process, specifically of like selling a business and what that feels like emotionally. And I've spoken about, I had shared experiences with people, and the common themes that come up is kind of nice. But at the time, I probably didn't have as much support as I could have done. But we had the co-founders, obviously. We were obviously supporting each other there, but nobody else from outside of that.
Yeah, no. That leads on nicely. I was just going to quickly ask a bit about the acquisition from RBS in NatWest, because at first they put a bit of investment in, is that right? And then they built up the stake, and then it's fully owned, but
No,
still
they didn't invest. We started a partnership with them in 2017, so we were still in the public markets at that point, and we started working with them, and we had built a pilot product together, or essentially a pilot proposition for their business banking customers, and that had been live for about a year or so, and we'd got like good traction, good response from customers on that, and then they put the offer in to acquire the business at that point. So yeah, that was back in 2018.
Wow. Okay. And how's that been? Has that been obviously more clout, I suppose, a bit more financial backing, and has it changed anything, or?
Yeah, I mean, it was a big transition for us as a business, obviously, for a number of reasons. The first thing was we came off of the public market, so that period that I talked about, where there was this real just like focus on short term, we just got to hit the next quarter's numbers. All of a sudden, that changed very dramatically, and we could start thinking about the business long term. In terms of actually what are we trying to build here? Now, obviously, we were doing that in the context of being part of a larger group now and thinking about what is our contribution and what is our place within that group. But there was a big shift in terms of that. We also grew the team. The bank did invest very significantly into the business in those early years after the acquisition. We went from about 130 people up to where we are today. So there was quite a dramatic shift in the growth of the business and in the customer base as well. We suddenly had access to this really big channel of business banking customers within RBS stroke NatWest, and that's been like quite a transformational channel for us as well. So it was a really big change, and then we had to navigate that. We had to navigate what it meant to be now not this completely independent business. We're now part of a large group, and how that would work for us operationally. What it meant culturally. All those things are things that we've had to wrestle with over the last 5 years. And I wouldn't say that's always been seamless. It's not. There's been friction points there. But I think we've come through those and we've managed to navigate them really successfully. And I think it's in that sort of like partnership that we have with NatWest, and the way that we work together, and the way that we sort of operate within that larger group is really successful now.
Yeah. Well, But again, I think you're doing it well. It looks like you're doing it well, and I've been following the company closely for well, since before 5 years, but definitely over the last 5 years, and as a FreeAgent user now, I think you're doing it really well, and doesn't look like anything's changed for negatively. It's if anything, it's just going strength to strength as a customer. I'll just close by just say, so what's the future look like? What's your future plans for FreeAgent? And I think everyone wants to know about AI as well. Do you want to talk? Is there any AI coming? Everyone talks about AI.
I can rant about AI for hours, man. So I don't know. I'm happy to talk about that, or I can talk about the plans that we've got, our strategy for the next couple of years.
Whatever you want to talk about. Like what's now?
Let's talk about the strategy first. I think for us, because it's an interesting one. Because when you introduced us, or introduced me, like back at the start of this interview, you talked about us being for freelancers and micro businesses, and that's certainly what FreeAgent is known as.
Yeah.
So over the last couple of years, one of the things that I've wanted us to do as an organization is to start being a bit more ambitious about who our target market is.
Yeah.
And partly this is about, to your point, since the acquisition, we grew the team, we've developed the product significantly. It's now a very, very capable bit of software. Mm-hmm. It's still easy to use, I hope, and it's still really accessible, but there's a bunch of features in there that accountants would previously have said, oh, FreeAgent doesn't have this, and if you want this, you need to go to the competitor products like Xero or whatever it is. And we've really managed to build a lot of that stuff. And so we're getting to the point now where I think that we can be a very, very credible product for a wider range of small businesses than we have been previously. Mm-hmm. So, and a credible product for a wider range of practices than we were previously, because traditionally we were sort of very successful with smaller practices and maybe some of the large contractor focused ones, but some of the more smaller practices. So what I've really been saying to the team is let's stand behind this amazing product and company that we built, and start to be a bit more ambitious about who we want to go after, and start to sort of challenge that this preconception that FreeAgent is only for the very, very smallest businesses, or only for freelancers, because I don't think that's true anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I think we want to start to shift market perception of the organization a little bit. Now that's not going to happen overnight, because we spent a long time building that brand and reputation, and we don't want to throw that away by any means, but we want to build on it, and we want to say actually we are suitable for a broader range of businesses, and we see that in terms of the type of businesses that use FreeAgent today and the feedback that we get from accountants. So that is really the sort of shift that we're making at the minute. It's not going to happen overnight, but we're starting to sort of make some really positive inroads in that.
Right, brilliant. Well, yeah, that's good. Well, I know that I think you regularly do well at things like Accountex, and I've spoken to some of your colleagues. I think you had some really good years going there, and accountants, I think, are taking FreeAgent a lot more seriously now than maybe they were in the past, more willing to want to work with you and use your products. So that's good.
Yeah, it is. And I think it goes back to that approach that we have with it, but you need to be able to back that up with a credible product that's going to work for that practice and their client base. So yeah, that is something that we put a lot of focus on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. I mean, you might be doing this anyway, but you just get me thinking out with my marketing hat on about there's definitely a lot of tech startups or tech businesses seem to really like FreeAgent. See as like their brethren, like similar sort of more sort of affinity with you as a business. So I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to go through the investors in their portfolio, making sure that they're encouraging the investees to use the software.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting angle. Actually, I think one of the things I don't think we've done that well at in the past is painting a picture that FreeAgent will scale with you as your business grows. Because not every business does grow up. So there's lots of micro businesses that are small and stay small and they have no ambitions to grow. But for those businesses that do want to grow, whether they're like traditional tech startups or whatever you want to call it, just a growing business, I don't think we've always had a really solid story there that we could be able to grow with you. And so that's definitely something that we're looking at now, is how that can we support you through the different phases of your business growth and business lifestyle. And there's things that we need to build to support that, maybe features that we didn't have previously that we've started to develop or we have launched recently. But it's definitely an area I think that I would like to see us doing more in.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, I'm sure you will. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Do you want to say anything about AI, or is it too?
Yeah. So I'm like, I think AI is really interesting. I'm quite cynical about a lot of this stuff.
I am as well, but I can see the uses. Yeah. Go on.
But what I think is, I think it's like, you shouldn't be cynical about the concept of AI. What I think is a little bit in the minute is that the way it's been packaged and marketed and shoved down your throat, that's what I'm cynical about, right? So we've been using machine learning and AI and FreeAgent for like 8 years, like for a long time. And it powers our bank transaction categorization process. So if you import transactions into FreeAgent through a bank feed, we run our algorithm over that to be able to categorize those transactions for you automatically. And we've been doing that for a long time. We've improved that algorithm, like a huge amount over the years, and it's now very successful, very accurate. And we then recently rolled that out to expenses as well. So we have this OCR receipt capture capability in FreeAgent, capture. That also gets assisted there. But here's the key thing is, like, the AI isn't a product. In fact, AI isn't really a feature. It's just something that helps and improves the existing features that your product has. Because, like, I don't think fundamentally customers, nobody's asking for, we want AI. They just want to be able to run their businesses more effectively, whether that's like getting paid on time or handling their expenses or, running payroll or whatever it is. And so if AI can help them do those things more effectively, then awesome, great. And there's some really exciting opportunities there. But this idea that you have to say, okay, here's AI, here's the chatbot now, and that's going to like just things. I think a lot of that stuff is being completely overhyped, and it's overpromised, and it will underdeliver.
Yeah,
it's just fundamentally, the approach that we're taking at FreeAgent is think, how can we use AI to enhance existing features that we've got, or maybe new features that we're building, but not necessarily just trying to ram it down your throat and package it up as this sort of like brand new thing, And I think that's sort of where I'm a little bit cynical about it. But at the same time, I think you need to not be too cynical to sort of close yourself off from there. Actually, there is some genuine, exciting opportunities there.
Yeah.
So it's just, I think, to get that balance right.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's, I love that approach. And I think because there's definitely people who are just saying that products are AI powered or they've got a bit of AI, and it is just a sales tactic, just to try. But unfortunately, some people will think, oh, well, if I've got a choice between one product and another, and one says it's got AI, and the other, I might go for the AI just because it sounds great. But so they
might do. They might. I'm not sure. I think people are already a little bit cynical about, there's enough noise around AI, both in terms of the amazing stuff it can do, but also the limitations and the dangers of it. People are already very, very aware of this stuff.
Yeah.
But not daft, people are not daft. And I don't think people are just ready to sort of like hand over the complete running of their business in terms of over to some robot. I don't think that's going to happen. And accountants are definitely not going to do that anytime soon, right? So I'm not sure. I think if you can prove that you're using AI in a fundamentally useful way that complements what somebody's trying to do, I just feel that that's something that's going to really gain the trust of people a lot more. And I'll see it. And okay, maybe you don't get the PR, maybe you don't get the the hype and the colleges or whatever it is, which is I think a lot of that stuff is targeted as. But I would rather do something which is genuinely helpful to customers than is targeted towards, getting traction on a press release.
Well, as a small business owner, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for just things that are going to
Yeah, how do you
my
get
life
paid?
easier and me more productive. And but yeah, I don't want AI done to me. I want AI done for me to make my
Yeah.
life easier, make me more productive and effective. So
Sometimes you might not even know it's AI. You know, if you're using our bank transaction categorization, you might know it's AI, but we don't ram that down your throat. It just like, you know, we just categorize your transactions for you, and you're like, okay, this is great, it's done this. People don't care. They shouldn't care. What they care about is like, is it helping me run my business?
Yeah, love it. Right, well, it's we're free agents under good guidance from you, good stewardship. So thank you very much for that. I really enjoyed that conversation and really appreciate you doing it. And keep up the good work and pass on the good regards to your team as well. And
Will do.
also just appreciate you supporting my platform events as well, you and your colleagues. So I'll leave it there, Owen. Thank you very much.
It's been great chatting, Paul. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Bye.